In this lecture specifically, we are going to be looking at the terms article, annex, and recital, and I will also provide a very brief timeline of some important dates to remember concerning the EU AI Act's implementation. Now, the reason that I'm providing this introductory lecture for the EU AI Act is because if you are unfamiliar with the way that EU legislation is written and the various terms used, then words like article, annex, and recital may be unfamiliar to you. If these are words that you are already familiar with, you can skip this lecture. You are unlikely to be tested on the definitions of these terms. However, you will see them throughout this series on the EU AI Act, and you are likely to see these words on the exam. So you will need to be able to differentiate between article, annex, and recital. So what is an article? An article in the EU AI Act sets out substantive rules, rights, and obligations. These have direct legal effect, and they are the operative part of the legislation. The EU AI Act at the time of recording includes 113 articles. In contrast, an annex provides additional details and technical specifications to articles. They are referenced in the main articles themselves, and they have the same legal value as articles. Annexes often contain information that may need frequent updates, and there are currently 13 annexes. Finally, a recital explains reasons, context, and objectives of the legislation. The recitals themselves are not legally binding, and they help to interpret the article's purpose and intent. There are 180 recitals in the EU AI Act. And just to be clear, you don't need to memorize all of the articles, the annexes, and the recitals. Again, I'm just defining these terms for you in case it's the first time that you're really starting to seriously work with this type of legislation. Some of the important dates to remember are as follows, and this information I'm providing purely for your situational awareness. I would be very surprised if you're tested on any of the implementation dates. However, if you work for an organization that falls under EU jurisdiction, it's important to know these dates so that you can ensure that your organization is compliant on time. In this lecture, we went over the terms article, annex, and recital. An article sets out substantive rules, rights, and obligations. It has direct legal effect and is the operative part of the legislation. An annex provides additional details and technical specifications. Annexes are referenced in main articles, and they have the same legal value as articles. Annexes often contain information that may need to be frequently updated. And finally, a recital explains the reasons, context, and objectives of legislation. Recitals themselves are not legally binding, but they do help to interpret the article's purpose and intent.